all of this beautiful nature is to be found in Commons. While no one knows exactly when the inhabitants of Yamanaka village first settled here, their harmonious cooperation with nature is what has kept them there until now. That, more than anything, is the essence of Iriai. Welcome to Iriai, the Commons of Kitafuji. It is here that you'll find the highest point in all of Japan. With its nearly flawless symmetry, its shape is considered a symbol of Japan across the world. Mount Fuji, Japan's majestic and glorious peak. Mount Fuji is located practically in the center of the Japanese archipelago, which stretches long out towards the southwest. The peak straddles Yamanashi Prefecture and Shizuoka Prefecture. With an altitude of 3,776 meters, the mountain and its vast height off the ground host an ecology that is both diverse and rich in nature. Valuable species of butterfly, believed to be on the verge of extinction, and unique alpine plants thrive here, making the mountain invaluable from an academic standpoint. A string of 5 lakes surrounds the Yamanashi Prefecture side of Mount Fuji, which is referred as Kitafuji. Out of these 5 Fuji lakes, the largest one is Lake Yamanaka. The cool lake Yamanaka has an elevation of 1,000 meters. It is in close proximity to Tokyo, at a distance of only 1.5 hours by car, and is a popular international tourist resort spot year-round, offering marine sports in the summer and fishing in the winter. True to its designated existence as a sacred mountain, the peak has been the site of pilgrimages from scores of mountain climbers who consider the peak symbolic of the faith of the Japanese people from days long ago. Even so, the combination of a frigid climate and volcanic gravel rendered the local plains a hostile environment from the standpoint of the villagers years ago, who depended on natural blessings to survive. Farming on poor soil meant that a vast expanse of land and abundant fertilizer was necessary. In order to preserve a suitable wide area for agriculture, as well as its soil capability, an even wider expanse of grassland was required of the mountain. With the land available making it almost impossible to secure foodstuffs in the fashion, earning a living was a matter of great importance. In Yamanaka village, over 100 horses had been bred for transport purposes. A need also existed to collect timber and burn coal. An immense mountain was a necessity in order to obtain both feed for the horses and timber. Catching fish from the lake was also a key means of earning cash. While water from the lake was used for everyday use, a number of wells existed inside the village. These were jointly used and managed by the households located around the wells. to ensure that they could perpetually use the limited natural blessings. According to them, the villagers jointly owned and maintained the land over time. Those natural blessings were represented by the likes of forests, grasslands, fishing, and water. More than anything else, it was those commons that served as the lifeline of this village. Out of the multiple existing commons, the mountain represents the most important. Here, the system surrounding the commons is called Iriai. Iriai is a Japanese term that means to enter the joint use of resources. The world's first exposure to the system of Iriai was 30 years ago, when a researcher by the name of Margaret McKean, who had been studying the Iriai system of the Lake Yamanaka, featured the term in her writings. With that, let's take a look at the commons within the Yamanaka villages. There are 3 forms of commons that Yamanaka villages are involved with. One of them is the vast expanse of commons that has been jointly used and managed by 11 former villages. This is called the Kitafuji slope. The second commons is called Muko Kirizume and was once jointly used and managed by the 3 former Lake Yamanaka villages, Yamanaka, Hirano, and Nagaike. The final type of commons are those independently administered by Yamanaka. The mountains surrounding Mount Fuji also represent a form of commons. The close relationship that the commons of the Kitafuji slope had with the every life and livelihoods of its villages meant that the resources here had to be sustained. While it is unclear exactly when the Iriai here began, strict management of the commons had been in place since the Edo period. In the region surrounding the Kitafuji area, inhabitants would produce and sell firewood within the commons, allowing them to obtain the wood needed for their household possessions. At the same time, however, the unbridled deforestation of the area was not an option. Kuchiake, or days designated by the village on which the ban on gathering thatch trees was temporarily lifted, had to be adhered to. This was strictly administered within the commons by yamami, observers dispatched by the villages. Villagers who use resources in a manner going against the norms of the Iriai resulted in the entire village that they belonged to being liable for their actions. Due to the resources within the commons being so crucial to people using them, numerous disputes surrounding the commons erupted. During the Edo period, disputes between the 11 villages of Kitafuji slope continued unabated for years prior. It was not until 1736 that these disputes came to a temporary halt under the ruling handed down by the Tokugawa shogunate, which ruled Japan at the time. This ruling would be referred to as the Sanction of 1736 and continues to represent historical evidence of Iriai on the Kitafuji slope. The revolution that took place in 1868 in the form of the Meiji Restoration would shake the Iriai system to its core. Through survey projects for delinization government-owned and privately owned mountain forest land, that commenced in 1876. The commons was under Yamanashi Prefecture were recognized as belonging to the Meiji administration, resulting in the Iriai-based use of resources by the villagers to become restricted. Furthermore, in 1889, possession of the commons was transferred to the imperial household. In response to these circumstances, former Iriai residents belonging to 11 villages on Kitafuji slope contested that they had Iriai rights, leading them to engage in a struggle to have their land returned to them. Following numerous demands for the commons to be returned and the intense conflict that accompanied those demands, the commons were finally returned to the villagers in 1911. Yamanashi Prefecture was granted the land by the imperial household, as well as the rights of the possession accompanying that land. These two books detail the history of the Iriai and the intense struggle to protect the commons. The intensity of that struggle, which took place across Yamanashi Prefecture, has no comparable precedent on a national level. As a result of this struggle, the land that had been rendered independent commons of Yamanaka village during the Tokugawa era was relinquished from Yamanashi Prefecture for a fee in 1917. Iriai rights holders were made to shoulder the burden of that fee. It is said that those that were unable to pay the fee left their village or sent their daughters out to weaving apprenticeships to cover the costs. Through the pains undertaken by the villagers, the independent commons of Yamanaka village became land-owned in the name of Sengen Shrine, where the guardian deity of the birthplace of the current village is said to rest. The tribulations suffered by the commons would continue. In 1936, as a matter of national policy, a large portion of the commons on Kitafuji slope were forcibly purchased by the Ministry of War to become the Kitafuji maneuvering ground. Furthermore, in 1945, this area would be occupied by Allied forces following the defeat of Japan in World War II, and later made into a maneuvering ground of the Japanese self-defense forces. As such, local residents were no longer allowed in the area. During this time, Iriai residents confronted the Japanese government on the matter. In addition to completing Iriai Accord, the residents constantly fought in various ways to protect their Iriai rights. The history of the Iriai has consisted of a struggle to protect residents' interests that has lasted from the 17th century up until today. However, it is through this history that the Iriai rights have been so formidably protected. Meanwhile, as a result of economic development spanning several decades, the Kitafuji area has become a rich central tourist resort area. Does this mean then that the Iriai system and commons are no longer needed? The communal spirit nurtured in the commons here continues to pump through the veins of the region even now. The spirit of the commons, as exemplified by coexisting with the land and working together to preserve it over time, is the same now as that of the villagers who fought to protect it. Based on these spirits of the commons, as we speak, the inhabitants of Yamanaka village and Kitafuji are working to create a new form of Iriai. The commons that our forefathers built from the ground up and continually struggle to protect at all costs are easing towards a transformation in line with the rapidly changing times. Our belief is that the time for us to re-examine our commons based on our own history and experiences of other regions is upon us. Let us conclude with this message from Fujiyoshi Takamura, Chairman of the Yamanaka Iriai Association. Today, you stand before a majestic mountain that has stood firm through all of the battles throughout history. Welcome. Come and take a look at our Iriai at the base of beautiful Mount Fuji.
Welcome to beautiful Mount Fuji.
We eagerly look forward to visitors from all over the world who have the same affection for the commons as we do.